Most gardeners think hydrangeas are finicky divas that demand constant attention. But what if I told you that some varieties practically thrive on neglect while rewarding you with blooms from early summer clear through the first frost? The secret isn't luck or green thumbs. It's simply choosing the right varieties that match your lifestyle and letting these stunning shrubs do what they do best. If you've been dreaming of those gorgeous blooms cascading over your garden fence, then stick around, because today we're diving into the 5 easiest hydrangea varieties that will completely transform your outdoor space. Hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell so you never miss our weekly gardening tips. Hey there, garden enthusiasts! I'm thrilled you're here today, and if you find this helpful, a quick thumbs up really helps us reach more folks ready to grow something beautiful. Let's kick things off with a hydrangea that laughs in the face of harsh weather and keeps on blooming. The Panicle Hydrangea, known as Hydrangea paniculata, is basically the workhorse of the hydrangea world. Popular varieties like Limelight and Little Lime produce massive cone-shaped flower clusters that start out creamy white or lime green in midsummer, then gradually shift to pink and eventually to russet brown as autumn approaches, giving you a constantly evolving color show from July through October or even November in milder areas. What makes Panicle hydrangeas absolute champions for beginners is their incredible cold hardiness, thriving everywhere from Georgia to Minnesota, and they bloom reliably every year on new wood, which means even if a late spring freeze zaps the tips or you prune at the wrong time, they'll still produce flowers that same season. These powerhouses actually prefer at least 6 hours of direct sunlight daily to produce their most spectacular blooms, though they'll tolerate some afternoon shade in scorching climates like Arizona or southern Texas. Plant them in well-draining soil enriched with compost, and while they appreciate consistent moisture during their first season, once established, they're remarkably drought-tolerant compared to other hydrangeas. One mistake I see constantly is gardeners being afraid to prune hard in late winter or early spring, but these plants actually benefit from aggressive pruning. Cutting them back to about 1 to 2 feet encourages stronger stems that can support those heavy flower heads without flopping. Here's a bonus tip. If you want truly massive flower clusters, thin out the stems to just 5 to 7 of the strongest shoots, directing all the plant's energy into fewer but absolutely spectacular blooms that can reach over a foot long. Have you noticed how those cone-shaped blooms seem to glow in the evening light, almost like natural garden lanterns? Now let's talk about a variety that works beautifully in those tricky shaded spots where most flowering shrubs just sulk. The smooth hydrangea, Hydrangea arborescens, is a true American native, and its modern cultivars like Annabelle and Incrediball are almost impossible to kill. Picture late June when your garden hits that awkward lull, and suddenly your smooth hydrangea explodes with massive snowball-shaped flower clusters, some reaching 10 to 12 inches across, each packed with hundreds of tiny florets, creating an almost ethereal white dome. These native understory shrubs thrive beneath tree canopies from New York through the Carolinas and westward into Oklahoma, perfectly adapted to handle humid summers and cold winters. And they're one of the few hydrangeas that actively prefer shadier conditions. The care routine is refreshingly simple. Plant them in rich, moisture-retentive soil with consistent dampness at their roots, and add a thick layer of shredded bark mulch to mimic forest floor conditions. Like Panicle Hydrangeas, smooth hydrangeas bloom on new wood, so you can cut them right back to the ground every late winter, which prevents floppy stems and encourages bigger flower heads. One common complaint is that Annabelle's blooms get too heavy and flop after rain, so choose newer varieties like Incrediball with sturdier stems, or simply cut plants back harder in spring to force stockier growth. Here's something fascinating. Smooth hydrangeas spread slowly by underground shoots, gradually forming wider clumps, so that single plant from 5 years ago might now be a 3-foot-wide colony of white blooms, perfect for naturalizing along woodland edges. Does your garden have one of those challenging, shady corners where this native beauty could finally be the solution? Here's something that might surprise you. The next hydrangea can actually change its flower color based on your soil chemistry, turning your garden into a living science experiment. The bigleaf hydrangea, Hydrangea macrophylla, is what most people picture when they think of classic hydrangeas, those gorgeous mophead or lace-cap blooms that dominate New England gardens and line Cape Cod streets in summer. Modern reblooming varieties like Endless Summer, Bloomstruck, and Let's Dance have revolutionized these beauties because they produce flowers on both old and new wood, meaning you get blooms even if winter kills back stems or you accidentally prune wrong, essentially giving you a safety net that older varieties never offered. These plants prefer morning sun with afternoon shade, especially in warmer regions like the Southeast, where intense heat can scorch those big leaves. But in cooler areas like the Pacific Northwest or coastal Maine, they handle more direct sunlight. Soil moisture is key because those large leaves transpire heavily, so plant them in rich organic soil that holds moisture well, and mulch generously to keep roots cool and consistently damp. The big mistake gardeners make is pruning in fall or early spring, because traditional varieties bloom exclusively on old wood, so when you cut them back hard, you're removing all the flower buds. But with newer reblooming types, you have much more flexibility, since they'll flower on current season's growth too. About that color-changing trick, acidic soil with available aluminum produces blue flowers, while alkaline soil yields pink blooms. And you can manipulate this by adding aluminum sulfate for blue or lime for pink. The white varieties stay white regardless. Here's a pro tip. In regions with harsh winters like upstate New York or Wisconsin, protect plants by creating a wire cage in late fall, stuffing it with leaves or straw to insulate those precious flower buds, because even reblooming varieties produce more blooms when old wood survives winter. What color are your big leaf hydrangeas producing, and have you ever experimented with adjusting your soil? Let me share something that changed my perspective. There's a variety that blooms later than all the others, extending your hydrangea season into fall. The Oakleaf Hydrangea, Hydrangea quercifolia, is another gorgeous American native that brings more than just flowers. Named for its large oak-shaped leaves, this southeastern native offers four-season interest with showy white, cone-shaped panicles in summer, stunning burgundy fall foliage that rivals any maple, and exfoliating cinnamon-colored bark creating winter interest. Varieties like Gatsby Pink and Alice produce massive upright clusters reaching over a foot long, starting pure white in June or July and gradually aging to soft pink and finally tan, persisting into winter. Oakleaf hydrangeas handle heat and humidity with grace while tolerating cold winters better than you'd expect from a southern native. They prefer dappled shade or morning sun, perfect for planting beneath tall pines or on the east side of your house. Once established, they're surprisingly drought-tolerant, their deep roots seeking moisture even during dry spells. These bloom on old wood, so avoid pruning, except to remove dead stems right after flowering, and they actually look better when allowed to grow naturally into their informal, rounded shape rather than being sheared into tight balls. One detail that makes Oakleaf hydrangeas special is their versatility, working beautifully as specimen plants in mixed borders or naturalized in woodland settings. The exfoliating bark becomes more prominent as plants mature, with older stems developing that gorgeous peeling texture catching your eye even in winter. If you're looking for a hydrangea that earns its space by offering something interesting every season rather than just a few weeks of summer flowers, this is the one. Have you considered how much more dynamic your garden could become by selecting plants that work hard across multiple seasons? I saved the one that surprised me most for last, and it's a hydrangea that hardly anyone talks about despite being incredibly resilient. The mountain hydrangea, Hydrangea serrata, looks similar to bigleaf hydrangeas but performs so much better in challenging conditions, tolerating both colder temperatures and drier soil than its finicky cousin. Varieties like Tuff Stuff and Tiny Tuff Stuff are compact powerhouses perfect for smaller gardens or containers, producing delicate lace-cap flowers in shades of blue, pink, or purple, depending on soil pH, and they rebloom consistently from early summer through fall without the drama that sometimes comes with traditional types. What makes mountain hydrangeas exceptional is their refined elegance combined with serious toughness, thriving in partial shade from Vermont to northern Georgia. These stay smaller and more manageable, typically reaching just 3 to 4 feet tall and wide, making them perfect for foundation plantings, mixed borders, or containers where you want that classic hydrangea look without overwhelming the space. They appreciate consistent moisture, but forgive occasional lapses better than big leaf types, and their compact growth means they're less prone to wilting on hot afternoons. Like their relatives, they bloom primarily on old wood, though many newer varieties also produce flowers on new growth. The flowers themselves are often more delicate, with lace-cap forms displaying a ring of showy florets surrounding tiny fertile flowers that pollinators adore. Here's something not many realize. Mountain hydrangeas often develop beautiful burgundy and red fall foliage, adding another season of interest. Are you drawn to that delicate lace-cap style, or do you prefer fuller mop-head blooms? Now, here's a reality check that'll save you money. The best thing you can do for any hydrangea is get the soil right from the start. Hydrangeas universally prefer rich organic soil that holds moisture without becoming waterlogged. So before planting, work several inches of compost into your planting area, creating that sweet spot where roots stay consistently moist but never soggy. In heavy clay soils common throughout the Midwest, consider raising your planting bed slightly or amending heavily with organic matter to improve drainage, because sitting in saturated clay over winter is one of the fastest ways to lose even the toughest hydrangea. In sandy soil like coastal areas, that same organic matter acts like a sponge, holding precious moisture and nutrients. Mulching is absolutely non-negotiable for hydrangea success, and I'm talking about a solid 3 to 4 inches of shredded bark, wood chips, or compost spread around the base. This mulch layer moderates soil temperature, keeps roots cooler in summer, provides winter insulation, suppresses weeds, and slowly breaks down to improve soil structure. One massive mistake is piling mulch right against hydrangea stems like a volcano, which traps moisture and invites rot. So always leave a few inches of clear space around the base, letting mulch start a bit away and extend outward to cover the entire root zone. Watering wisdom matters tremendously because hydrangeas have substantial moisture needs but suffer from overwatering in poorly drained sites. During their first season, water deeply once or twice weekly, depending on rainfall and temperature, encouraging deep roots rather than shallow ones, and once established, most need about an inch of water weekly, more during heat waves. The best time is early morning, allowing foliage to dry before nightfall and reducing disease pressure, and always water at the base rather than overhead to keep those leaves dry and healthy. Does your watering routine support deep root growth, or have you been encouraging shallow roots by frequent light sprinkling? Let's bust a common myth. You don't need to deadhead spent flowers unless you really want to for aesthetic reasons. Unlike roses or petunias that need constant deadheading to keep blooming, hydrangeas set their flower buds for the following year, regardless of whether you remove faded blooms, and many gardeners love leaving those dried flower heads through fall and winter for textural interest and architectural beauty. Those papery blooms catch frost and snow beautifully, creating striking winter focal points. If you do choose to deadhead for a tidier look, simply snip the spent bloom just above the first set of healthy leaves, being careful not to remove too much stem, especially on varieties that bloom on old wood where you might be cutting away next year's buds. Fertilizing hydrangeas is honestly simpler than the garden center makes it seem, because these aren't heavy feeders demanding constant intervention. A generous layer of compost applied as mulch. Each spring provides slow-release nutrients throughout the season while improving soil structure, essentially feeding your plants and conditioning soil in one step. If you want an extra boost, a balanced, slow-release fertilizer in early spring as new growth emerges is plenty. Avoid high-nitrogen fertilizers that push excessive leafy growth at the expense of flowers, and never fertilize after midsummer because late-season fertilization encourages tender new growth that won't harden off before winter. Here's something that changed my approach completely. These plants tell you what they need if you just pay attention. Leaves wilting in afternoon heat, but perking up overnight usually means they need more consistent watering or afternoon shade. Not that the plant is dying. Sparse flowering often points to incorrect pruning that removed flower buds, insufficient sunlight, or harsh winter damage to old wood. Yellowing leaves with green veins typically indicate iron chlorosis from overly alkaline soil, correctable with soil sulfur or chelated iron. Learning to read these signals transforms you from someone following rigid rules to someone who truly understands their plants. So we've covered 5 incredible hydrangea varieties that can transform any American garden, each bringing its own magic while being remarkably forgiving. The Panicle Hydrangeas give you stunning cone-shaped blooms and unbeatable cold hardiness. Smooth hydrangeas light up shady spots with massive white snowballs and native toughness. Bigleaf hydrangeas deliver classic mop-head beauty with color-changing magic. Oakleaf hydrangeas provide four-season interest with gorgeous flowers, fall color, and exfoliating bark. Mountain hydrangeas offer compact elegance with serious resilience and pollinator appeal. Each one delivers spectacular results without demanding your every waking moment. There's something deeply satisfying about growing hydrangeas successfully. Watching those flower buds swell in early summer and burst open into full glory, knowing you created the conditions for that beauty to unfold. These aren't just pretty shrubs, but living investments that get better every year, growing larger and more floriferous as their roots establish, eventually becoming those show-stopping focal points that define your garden's character. Gardening with easy care plants like these isn't about taking shortcuts or settling for less. It's about working smarter and choosing varieties that align with your climate, your soil, and your lifestyle, so you spend more time enjoying your garden and less time stressing over it. Which of these 5 hydrangeas speaks to you and your garden's specific needs? And are you ready to finally create that lush, flower-filled landscape you've been dreaming about? If this guide helped you feel more confident about growing these beautiful shrubs, go ahead and hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you catch all our upcoming videos on creating gardens that truly thrive. Happy gardening, and I'll see you in the next one.